The taxi industry in KwaZulu-Natal is being accused of intimidating commuters as well as e-hailing operators. The Provincial Transport Department has now cautioned operators against taking the law into their own hands due to unhappiness about what they say is unfair competition from the side of the e-hailing operators. The South African National Taxi Council's KwaZulu-Natal spokesperson, Mr. Sifiso Shangase, joins us now to talk more about this. A very good evening to you, sir. Good to have your time tonight on News at Prime. What exactly is going on with you and the e-hailing operators in KwaZulu-Natal?
Good evening to you, Tobek, and the viewers at home. The issue that is at hand currently is this unfair competition that is taking place between e-hailing individuals as well as the minibus taxi operators. We know for a fact that for you to be able then to operate and be able then to get money out of that, you need then to comply with National Land Transport Act, which stipulates clearly that you need to have an operating license for you then to do such a transaction. Unfortunately, we know for a fact that there is a bill before Parliament which is now dealing with the issue of e-hailing here in South Africa, which then means e-hailing is illegal. It's not a legal mode of transport that is being within the parameters of the law within our country. And for that matter, we are now saying law enforcement agencies are supposed to do something about these guys because the competition is unfair in a sense that their operation is everywhere, whereas we are given operating licenses with restricted rules and routes that you are required then to operate within. And if you go beyond those routes, your vehicles get impounded by law enforcement agencies. And you are saying even government officials are supporting our statement to say e-hailing is not legal in South Africa up until there is an act that will govern it through the National Land Transport Act.
Which government officials are those who are supporting you?
Well, it's officials within the province.
Which
We've had
one?
a meeting with them. It's provincial regulatory entity.
So there's a big difference, of course. The difference here is that e-hailing the world over, and it has come up for criticism with other licensed taxi services, long-standing taxi operators, shall we say, because it's unregulated, and the issues with the lack of regulation around it, not necessarily illegal, because if they were illegal, they wouldn't be right across the many provinces in the country. So do you accept that there is a distinction between the two things where a lack of regulation does not mean it's illegal, legally?
Well, we still stand with regards to our definition as well as the interpretation of the law itself. They are illegal in the sense that they do not have or they do not comply with the National Land Transport Act. If ever you are conducting a business where you commute individuals with an intention then to be able then to be remunerated or get financial gain, you are required then to have an operating license in South Africa. That is the provision of the Act. If then you do not comply with the Act itself, you are illegal. You are an illegal operator. And because they are currently using a gadget which cannot be regulated in South Africa, that is what government is looking into, as well as into how to go about regulating as well as legalizing their operations. Because for any person who is purchasing that vehicle would say he or she would want to go to a particular business, and then eventually you get those 2 discs, and people tend to think that by merely getting those 2 discs, you then qualify to ferry commuters on the basis that you comply with the National Land Transport Act, which is the act that governs all public transports, which are intended then to ferry commuters within and around the country.
But the issue of a lack of regulation is not necessarily just the industry's problem, isn't it? Because ultimately it is the legislators in this country who are supposed to make sure that those rules are in place. And in the absence of that, it's not the job of taxi drivers, taxi owners, to then be the ones who want to marshal others around, prevent people from getting into an Uber, a Bolt, etc., because that is not your job.
Well, we're not marshalling people around. We do understand that the person has got a choice to choose his mode of transport within South Africa because we are a free country. But what is happening is that we are very much concerned with regards to where we operate, because if a person is now operating within your space unfairly, whereas you are being given authority to operate there, and if any other mode of transport like minibus taxis are also moving around, they get impounded by traffic law enforcement officers. And you are saying the very same then should be applicable to any other mode of transport that is in the public space, because the competition by so doing so will be fair to everybody. We are not marshalling anyone. What we normally do is we have joined roadblocks with law enforcement agencies.
But why would you have a joint roadblock when you're not law enforcement? What is your role in that? Because you're not law enforcement. It's not your place to tell people where to be.
Here in South Africa, we understand that we have a challenge of even the number of law enforcement agencies. And we entered into a working relationship, which is a mutual one in KZN, whereby we work together with the traffic law enforcement agencies in instances where they are not around. But whenever we conduct roadblocks, we work with them because they are the ones who are empowered by the law to stop vehicles. And then because our Sogomela guys have been trained on basic vehicle inspection, they have certificates which they obtained through a training for 3 days. They then are able and empowered then to actually do inspection on our vehicles, which are minibus taxis as well as meter taxis, because we are now being elevated at Santaco to be an apex structure where we incorporate meter taxis, scholar transporters, as well as the mainstream minibus taxis.
But nowhere in there's a very big difference between your people being trained, of course, to inspect your vehicles as Santaco and the related services, and them going on to, as you suggested earlier, basically being substitutes for traffic officials and then interfering with e-hailing operators. There's a clear difference between those two things.
Well, there is indeed, but what normally happens is that in an instance whereby our people then are stopping e-hailers, it's merely a concern on the routes that they've been granted by the authorities to operate through. And then if there's an e-hailing personnel who is now touting customers within the route, that is when then they interfere or intervene, in fact.
What do you mean touting? Because finish your point, sir. Apologies.
Well, what is happening is that for them, there is a gadget which is required to be utilized, whereby a person will request. And now what is happening in certain instances, they no longer requested. They have individuals that they go around hooting as if they are also taxis. That's another violation. Number two, they come to the ranks hooting. Number three, some of them have got staff who are now called leash clubs and staff members, with whom they pick up early in the morning and then they bring back to their respective areas, utilizing the very same routes which are entitled to be utilized by minibus taxis on the basis of the operating licenses that have been issued to these various associations.
But now, what you're saying to me, by the Lift Club example, you're suggesting that if my friends and I, 4 of us, live in KwaZulu-Natal and we decide to club together and use the same car to get to and from work, you take exception to that? You've got an issue?
We take exception when you qualify that statement by saying, if then there is a transaction where there is money.
By that, do you mean us agreeing to put together money? Hold on a minute for me, sir.
Just a literal.
Apologies. I want to be clear just on that. So you're saying if people are part of a Lift Club and they all agree to make, let's say, a contribution to petrol or compensate the colleague for petrol, that then means you've got an issue with that. Is that what you're telling me?
Definitely, we do have an issue with that because there's now a transactional, financial transaction that is taking place between and amongst you.
But it's got nothing to do with you.
You are now a public. You are rendering a service which is a public transport.
As defined by whom? Because this is an agreement between friends and colleagues. You surely cannot go around telling people if they can lift their colleagues or not.
That is why then when you are being stopped, they ask you. And in an instance whereby a person would say, no, I'm giving them a lift, nothing happens to those. But when there is a financial transaction which is taking place amongst those commuters, then we deem it as now being a public transport. And then if you do such, you now qualify to become a public transporter, and you're required then to fall within a specific law, which is an LTA, and you're required to have an operating license then.
According to who? Because people have lift clubs all over the country, and that's not the rule.
Transport Act.
But
according to the National Transport
how
Act.
do you then determine that a transaction has been, there's been an exchange of money? Are you stopping every person on the road, and if there are more than 2 of you or more than 1 of you in the car, you're saying, did you guys pay your colleague to be in this car? Is that what you are doing? I'm concerned about the accuracy.
No, they just do it randomly.
Who's
randomly. It's our guys who are called Shogomela.
With what authority? With what authority are they stopping? With what authority are they stopping private vehicles and asking people whether they paid to be in there or not? What business is that of theirs?
Well, to tell you the truth, there isn't any specific authority that empowers us. That is why in the initial, I made it clear to you that when we conduct roadblocks, which are legitimate and within the parameters of the law, we do them jointly with law enforcement agencies. But these operations are done randomly because the law enforcement agencies are not assisting in this particular fashion or issue. Hence, then our members being frustrated, especially that nothing is being done, whereby where they are supposed to have been protected with the little that they're actually getting out of these commuters. Now there's this unfair competition that is taking place, which is now destroying the business itself.
Okay.
With which we are basically, it's one of our source of income. Because beyond this, there is none. Yes.
Oh, sorry for cutting you off there. I wanted to go. Yes, I can still hear you, sir. Apologies. I think there's a bit of a delay on our line. I wanted to come to what you were saying when you said you work with traffic law enforcement around this issue. Are you saying to us that there are traffic departments in KwaZulu-Natal that have given you permission as a taxi association to stop vehicles, be they e-hailing vehicles, be they cars owned by private citizens, and question the people who are in the said vehicle as to why they're in there, whether they've paid, etc.? And if so, which traffic departments are these which have granted you that permission?
No, I made it clear from the onset that we have never been empowered by any legal prescript. There isn't any legislation that allows us to do that. That's one. Number two, there isn't any department from the province of KwaZulu-Natal that has given us authority to stop vehicles. What is happening is that the department is having a mutual relationship with Santaco in the province and a component of ours, which is called Shokomela. Our guys have been trained for 3 days to be able then to conduct basic vehicle inspection on our vehicles so that we are able then to combat incidents and accidents on our roads so that our vehicles are also roadworthy. When we conduct those, then we conduct them jointly with the law enforcement agencies, and they are the ones who stop vehicles on our behalf. And then I then said to you, due to frustration, because there is lack or the number of law enforcement agencies is minimal in the country and even in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, due to frustration, then our members, having seen that the small slice of the cake that we are now living with or upon is being taken unfairly by the competitors, we are now saying, because these operations are illegal, that is our own interpretation of the operation itself, because for you to become legal, you need to comply with NLTA, which is the National Land Transport Act. Currently, there is a bill before Parliament, which is going to be regulating as well as legalizing the e-hailing in South Africa.
So out of frustration, your members are breaking the law because, by your own admission, they're acting without authority and stopping and questioning people. The 3-day training you keep referencing, as you rightfully said in your own words, was so that they could have dealings with your vehicles. That does not give them permission to interfere or stop anyone else's car, as you said they've done. So they're breaking the law.
Well, it's subject to interpretation in terms of if a person is breaking the law on the other side, and well, the mere fact that we cannot be able then to correct wrong with another wrong, because that initial person who is illegally operating is also breaking the law, and nothing is being done to that person. And what do? You need to protect what is within your range. If a person encroaches your home, is breaking the law, what do you need to do?
So
you need to defend your territory.
And I get the defense.
Yes,
I get you defending your territory, because I'm sure you know, in Johannesburg, where I am, even in Pretoria, very nearby, the metered cab industry especially had similar issues with e-hailing, so much so that there was violence that culminated in one instance in Pretoria where an e-hailing driver was burnt in his car, allegedly by metered cab operators. So it's not a new frustration. It's not unique to KwaZulu-Natal. It's not even unique to South Africa. Right across the world, people such as you have complained that e-hailing is unregulated and has an unfair advantage. Now, whether or not there's merit to the unfair advantage thing, we could discuss till the cows go home. But ultimately, on the issue of regulation, that is a fight that you should be having with the government. Why aren't you taking it to the right people? Because only they can change the rules. The legislators can make that change.
Well, we are engaging with government. We are engaging with government, which is why then I said to you, over 3 days ago, we're engaging with government as well as the e-hailers representatives, because they came into our offices at a regional level, and then we said at least for us to have a peaceful and amicable solution, there will be a need for them then to come up with a delegation, which will probably be composed of about 10 people. And from our side, we also have an executive. We then met with PRE, which is the provincial regulatory entity, where they were informed about the legislation which is pertinent then to their operation. They were informed that the operation is illegal by government officials. They were informed in front of us that their operation was illegal, and there's a bill before Parliament, and that bill is the one that is going to be able then to regulate as well as legalize them. Because here in South Africa, we don't have any control and legality as well as legislation that is overseeing their operation. And on those bases then, they are legal. They are illegal. They cannot be able then to operate within our rules. Hence, when we've studied the bill itself, it now provides for operating licenses for them then to qualify once it becomes an act.
Mr. Sifiso Shangase, good to speak to you, KZN Provincial Spokesperson for Santaco. Thank you for your time.